The 20th anniversary Trans Am is the jewel of the Pontiac Firebirds, and long term is likely to be the most collectible Firebird Trans Am that has ever been made. It borrowed the engine from Darth Vader, the Buick GNX. Now everybody knows that when the Buick GNX came out, it was setting numbers that Porsches couldn't catch up with, and when that motor was installed in the Pontiac Trans Am, General Motors made the fastest production American car, and they did it in a very sneaky way. They rated it at only 250 horsepower on a motor that was pushing well over 350. A lot of people say that it was to not dethrone the Corvette. It would not have been good for marketing purposes, but those that knew. And when this car came out, it set records all over the place with an automatic, so the performance numbers were repeatable over and over and over again. And for those that want to upgrade this GNX engine, it is an incredible base for horsepower that is just crazy. And I mean crazy because you will never truly hook up. The 20th anniversary Pontiac Trans Ams have never really dropped in price. They have always been collector item cars, so the chances of finding a deal on one of these is really difficult. But if you think about it, those who purchased these cars knew what they were when most of the public didn't. So these type of cars went to collectors and people that were just really hardcore enthusiasts, because most people didn't even know what this was. Now they know because they see the auction prices and they see that why is this car far more expensive, and so they do the research. But still, most people find it odd that a Pontiac Trans Am has a V6 instead of a V8. But it's not just a normal V6. That's Darth Vader's engine in a Trans Am. When the Pontiac Formula Firehawk came out, not many people knew about it, and as a matter of fact, most people still don't know about it. This is the ultimate Firebird. During normal street driving, the performance is far more aggressive and startling than a C4 ZR1. It came with the ZF 6-speed off of the Corvette, but it also came with a Ferrari F40 brakes. And what I like about it is that it shows what you can do with the L98 5.7. A lot of people think that the only way to go fast is with an LS swap, but this car proves that you can do a lot building up an L98. This was a car that had 350 horsepower, and most people think it's underrated, and 390 foot-pounds of torque. That torque number on a car that light dominates the driving experience. And with these upgrades, this car even passed emissions. It's an ultra rare, impressive Firebird that most of us will never see in person, but it does give you a real-world example of what you can do with a 5.7 L98 engine and how great they are with a 6-speed. Believe me, the grass is not greener on the other side of a swap. If you work your standard 5.7 engine and do it right, you will run circles on most LS swaps for a lot less money and headaches. The packaging on the 3rd gen F bodies is probably their #1 winning formula. When these cars came out, they were almost 600 pounds lighter than the 2nd generation Firebirds. But this being a new type of construction meant that a lot of upgrades were done as the model years progressed. What stands out to me is what they did with the structure of the car. The F body had 2 additional revisions throughout its lifespan. The first one was in 1985 with the introduction of the 16-inch wheels. The entire chassis was stiffened up with different weld spots all throughout the structure. So the structure on the 1985 and up F bodies are stiffer than the first 82 and 83 years. But the biggest upgrade that was not advertised anywhere was in 1991. This is the year that the F bodies became drum tight. Pontiac engineers used structural adhesive all through the gaps of the structure. The F body cars are unibody, so imagine pieces sandwiched together like Legos. But now imagine pieces sandwiched together with glue. It was simple, but it was game-changing for the 91 and 92 model years. So much so that was the first time that the Pontiac engineers did the convertible version. Because as everybody knows, having a convertible is like kind of having a shoebox and taking off the lid. It wiggles. But if you see the Pontiac Firebird's convertible road test at the time, everybody says that it was the stiffest convertible structure on the market and that there was no difference between the convertible and the coupe.
An almost total lack of convertible body flex. We could detect hardly any structural difference between our Trans Am convertible and the hardtop Firebird GTA that we tested last year. The quality of our Trans Am convertible's chassis stiffness really comes home when the car is pushed hard.
To me, it's really interesting seeing all these road tests mention how stiff this structure became, but no mention of how. But I dug up some old footage for you guys, right from the engineers describing this process all the way back in 1991.
It's a program called Quality Now, finding a way to strengthen the body integrity of the F-car significantly, silencing squeaks and rattles throughout the vehicle.
We approached this two ways. Firstly, to improve the weld integrity, went to more modern welding controllers in the body shop. Secondly, we introduced the use of a structural weld-through adhesive. This is not new technology, but it's an application of existing technology. The overall result has been a drastic improvement in the torsional stability of the vehicle. Engineers at our Milford Proving Ground talk about a night and day difference, what they would term a quantum leap in the improvement in the integrity of the vehicle.
You see, every single 91 and 92 Firebird that I've ever been in has been drum tight. The adhesives used throughout the structure on the F-body the last 2 years is more significant than putting subframe connectors. This also means if you're looking to LS swap a Firebird, it might be a good idea to look into these newer structures just because you might have to do a lot less to stiffen it up versus an earlier year. So 91 and 92, the changes are more than stylistic. It is game changing. These cars are getting to such an age now that what I usually recommend as the first upgrade is a tune-up. Throttle response, how fast it turns on, how much torque it's cranking out, feel the pants stuff, all with a simple tune-up. Don't do anything else unless you've tuned up your engine. Believe me, these cars were impressive back then and they are very impressive now. And there's a lot of things that you can do to this car to make them feel even better. But there are some things that make them feel slower. Much slower. Now let's jump into the performance upgrades that I actually do recommend for F-body cars. And most of the upgrades are common sense upgrades. But there is one thing. If you're gonna start upgrading, remember this. The 5.0 and the 5.7 twin-port engines, being similar, get similar upgrades. But when you start upgrading the 5.7, you get a lot more bang for your buck. So you can do the same catback exhaust system on a 5.0 and on a 5.7 and spend the same amount of money, but the 5.7 is gonna give you a lot more horsepower. You can do the intake, which is one of the main choke points, but again, when you upgrade the 5.7, you're gonna get a lot more power than you do if you do the 5.0. It's still worth it. But as far as fun, gears and a high stall torque converter on the automatics will completely transform your Pontiac Firebird. So if you're considering doing an LS swap or a lot of other different upgrades and you haven't done gears or a high stall torque converter, do those first and then reassess. Believe me, that might be all the upgrades that you need besides putting a louder exhaust. A common mod that everybody seems to have on their wish list is an LS swap, and it's pretty obvious to see why. The LS engine is one of the, if not the best motor that has ever been made. You can see LS motor swaps on 911s, 928s, Ferraris, and even go-karts. They're some of the easiest engines to work on. They're ultra smooth, quiet, and they give you modern performance. So if you do an LS swap on your Pontiac Firebird, guess what? Chances are, just because of the weight alone, you're gonna be running circles around the newer muscle cars. But do not think it's that easy. Forget about your friend of a friend of a friend that told you that he could do it for 2,000 bucks. Those are projects, and most of those that I've seen remain projects. As a matter of fact, you see them pop up for sale all the time, and they stay for sale for a long time. With the LS motor, there are so many other upgrades that you need to do that don't even include the engine. The electronics, the gauges, the fuel system, the brakes, and stiffening up the chassis if you have T-tops. Factor anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000 to do something decent. So if you know what you're getting into with an LS swap, go for it because it's one of the all-time great engines that has ever been made. But if you're going into it thinking that you're gonna do it for $2,000, there are far better options. One of the best upgrades for the feel of a Firebird is not the engine, it's actually the handling. And it's something that is so subtle that you would skip it thinking it's not really important. And it is installing the Wonderbar. This Wonderbar ties both sides of the chassis together. tight. The steering can go from sloppy to precise, just slapping in a Wonderbar. But a lot of people do this upgrade and they stop there. There's one thing that every single Pontiac Firebird that I've seen has not good, and it is the rag joint on the steering. This is kind of like the buffer that filters out road imperfection as you're going down the road. This item wears and the car starts feeling super sloppy. I would go as far as saying is that anybody who has driven an F-body car and has not come away totally impressed has most likely driven a car that has a rag joint that is on its way out, and this affects the perception of the entire car. If you install the Wonderbar and a fresh rag joint coupler, you'll see how unbelievable these cars are at handling. It completely transforms the handling and the feel of these F-bodies. They love corners, but they're getting old now, and these items need to be in perfect condition. The other thing that a lot of people do that actually kills the fun in these cars is something that you might not think kills the fun. And this happens by, throwing money at the car, wanting to take it to the next level. And it's recommended by a lot of good people. And it is installing sound deadener all over the car. You see, whenever you install sound deadener all over an F-body in particular, not other cars, this is particular to the F-body, the Trans Am or Camaro does get a lot quieter. But what happens? It feels a lot slower. How much slower? If you do this amount of sound deadening in your Firebird and you take it for a spin afterwards, when before this you wanted just a little bit more performance, after doing this, you're not gonna wanna work on this engine anymore. You're gonna wanna do an LS swap. And it's very simple. In the hunt to make the car quieter, smoother, and try to remove every little squeak that you can possibly have, you're removing a lot of road noise that these cars are known for. This road noise is part of the charm of these cars, and it's part of the reason they feel so fast. If you completely dynamat your Pontiac Firebird, you are removing this element of the F-bodies, and the car is going to be smoother, but it's also going to feel a lot slower. So only do this upgrade if you have already LS swapped your car and are cranking over 500 horsepower to the wheels. Otherwise, it's gonna sap the fun out of this car. Believe me, I used to do this myself to every single car that I've had, and more is not more. More means just feeling slower. Don't make the same mistakes I've made and this guy made. You put Dynamite around the speakers and that's it. Anything else? Not good. Another upgrade that I'm seeing a lot of people make to these F-bodies is putting aftermarket AC systems in them. Now, if you've got a beautiful LS swap and you want to hide all the AC components, then go ahead, go for it. But to think that you're gonna upgrade over what came from the factory is just not gonna happen. You see these huge AC dryers that these cars have. These are ice boxes on wheels. If everything is working properly, you could be driving down the desert and you're gonna have the AC on low with no tinted windows. But you might think to yourself, how can this be? I've got a perfect running system and the AC leaves to be desired. It's very simple. These cars were designed to run with Freon R12. When you put 134, the performance goes straight down as far as ultimate performance and the all-important cooldown time. So virtually every single person that I've seen upgrade their AC system to an aftermarket unit, they all have one thing in common. They're running R134, which is not nearly as good as R12. So whenever you're seeing this video, consider this before you do any kind of upgrades to the AC system on these F-body cars. R12 keeps the car freezing cold. So which model to get? At the end of the day, you know which one speaks to you. But there is one thing that is more important than model or year or anything, and it is miles and condition. Low mile rapper cars will always command a huge premium. Look at this. Now, don't go crazy thinking that this is fake. You're reading right. And this is not just that the market is crazy. This is the way that it's always been. Low mile cars in pristine condition that have been always garage kept will always command a premium over rare cars that are completely beat, because cars are only new and original once. So whatever Firebird you're itching to get, always look first at miles and condition. 10,000 miles will always be better than 80,000 miles. And this is the way that it's always been and likely will always be. So if you want to get a car just to take it to car shows, to enjoy on weekends, it's okay to splurge on a super nice example if you're not going to put an extra 50,000 miles on it. Because if you do happen to sell the car a little bit later, you'll get your money back, guaranteed. So you have to know what your goals are with the the car. Actually, with anything in life. Everybody's got their 5-year goals, their 2-year goals, their 10-minute goals. I can't wait to finish this video so I could get another peanut butter sandwich. So choose wisely, because you can spend a lot restoring a car that really should not have been restored. I see people trying to restore cars because they think that they're incredible deals, and by the time many years pass and they do the math, it would have just been better just to get something super nice from the very beginning.
I'm an 82 Trans Am, and I think it's about the most exciting car I've ever driven in my life.
And that's because every single 3rd gen Pontiac Firebird has some Knight Rider in it.